There is a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Welcome everyone, my name is Jonas. I'm the head of F10 here in Singapore, and we're very excited to finally kick off this event, an in-person event. Finally, we are not on Zoom anymore. I think all of us are very excited. Just a few words about F10. At F10, we have the mission to unite tech startups with big business to shape the future of banking and insurance. And I think that's also very much the topic of what we want to discuss today, namely, don't build it all by yourself, how to leverage fintech partnerships. And I'm not here on my own, obviously, as you can all see. I'm here joined by an amazing panel of representatives from companies who share the same passion for meaningful partnerships. I think I'll hand it right over to you, Irina, to introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Irina. I'm part of Rapyd. What I do at Rapyd is predominantly marketing and PR, but despite that, I've spent about 16 years generally in the fintech industry, and 11 of them in partnerships, in different partnerships roles. So partnerships and the topic of today's session is very near and dear to my heart, but also for the company that I'm part of, Rapyd, partnerships and collaborations is literally the DNA. That's how we operate. Everything that Rapyd does is based on the network of partners, tech partners, fintech partners, channel partners. That's literally the modus operandi. What Rapyd does, it's a cloud-based global fintech and payments infrastructure. We enable payments collection, as well as payment disbursement for the variety of the flows, B2C, B2B, C2B, C2C, well, basically a range of the use cases. The sky is the limit. We also do card issuing, white label card issuing. We do FX and white label KYC solutions. So basically a pretty holistic platform for anyone who wants to build fintech solutions and fintech products.
Hi everyone, so I'm Fanny. I'm from the Amazon Web Services team, so AWS Startup Business Development team. So what we do, we are a cloud computing platform, but my team, Startup Business Development, primarily helps startups from our partners, which are the VCs, the accelerators, the co-working spaces, to really help their portfolio companies to grow. And what we do provide is a range of startup programs, not only, of course, credits that everyone wants to get that, but also training, support, having that one-on-one consultation with us. And at a later stage, we have go-to-market programs, we have marketing opportunities, and kind of leveraging the One Amazon company as a whole. It's not just Amazon Web Services, but how about the Amazon Retail Store? How about the Alexa team? How about the Twitch team? We have quite a range of different business units that we could support startups at a later stage to really help them grow. So partnership, definitely a big part of it. It's not just about how we help startups, but how do we help startups to partner with the other business units that we have. So that's what we do. Amit?
Great. And Jonas, thank you for arranging this in-person session. I think it's a welcome break from our Zoom calls, so it's great to be here and great to see people around here. So my name's Amit. I lead the business for Asia Pacific, for R3 in Asia Pacific. R3 is an enterprise software company. We work on multi-party systems and build technology which other companies use to build applications. And as Irina was saying, which is true for Rapyd, that's true for us as well in many ways. Partnerships is the DNA of what we do. I think we have over 300 partners now building on our platform. These range from ISVs, SI companies, large corporates, and some partners I see in the room as well who work with us. We have been on a journey for 6 years now, and we are across 15 offices globally, around 400 people. So, but it's great to talk about partnerships and how that brings value to us as a company, how that brings value to our startups and our corporates who we work with.
Great, thank you so much. Proud to have you all here. I think really the right panel to discuss partnerships. Just a few housekeeping rules for those online who join us. On the left-hand side, which is probably here on the screen, there is a tab called Sessions. And at the end of the event, you can join colleagues that represent the companies here, and you can chat to them and ask directly questions as well. But also ask questions directly in the chat function, which there is. My colleagues will tell me about what questions that come in, and then we can address them directly with the panel. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the housekeeping rules. So I think let's get started with some tough questions for the panel. So to give a bit of a background, in a recent McKinsey study, 75% of startups mentioned that it is very important for them to do corporate partnerships. And I'm sure the same can be said about corporates if you read their latest annual statements or if you look at their social media posts. Everyone is trying to work with startups, and quite successfully so. I think on the surface that looks pretty successful, everyone is happy, but of course there are also challenges that the startups but also the corporates face. And I would like to talk first a bit about what kind of challenges are you seeing in these fintech partnerships? What are the points of frictions out there? Who would like to take this first question? Let's start with Amit then.
Happy to. So look, I think while partnerships have bloomed across the industry, what we see across two key challenges. One primarily is alignment of objectives. I think the alignment between the fintech and the corporate on what they both want to achieve through the partnership. And often enough, I think not enough time is spent. I think the fintech's probably selling their product. The corporate is probably looking for something quick, but you don't determine what is your midterm objectives and what are your long-term objectives. So that's one. And second, I think many times corporates are also going through their evolution, their transformation. So they are becoming more and more clear of what they want from the fintech and what they want from various fintechs they partner with. And many times you're caught in the middle of their transformation or their evolution of thinking. So if you are not clear on what you want to achieve, then that actually hampers the progress that partnership can make, that impact that partnership can make. So that's, I would say, the two biggest challenges, Jonas, of what we see.
Thank you, Amit. Any other challenges that you're seeing?
I can go next. I think from our perspective, I see the challenges as two parts: the early stage fintech startups and the growth stage fintech startups. I think they have different problem sets. For the earlier stage, as the startup just started, they are still small, nimble, agile. They pretty much can partner with everyone and anyone. But how do you find the right partnership? And that's key. And I think you should start from day one to find the right partnership and not go through what a lot of challenges that other startups went through, learn from what the other people are making, learn from the lessons, and try not to do that. There's so much resources out there with the community, the ecosystem is thriving in this region, especially in Singapore, and the fintech ecosystem here is just crazy. I mean, we have so many different ecosystem partners, the Singapore FinTech Association, for example, SFA, Arena, better than me. There's a whole lot. I think even MES, they are very, very hands-on. We are lucky to be in a spot where there is things like Singapore FinTech Festival. Even though it's COVID season, we had a pretty big virtual event last year. There's a lot of help and support out there that early stage startups should definitely look at that. And I think leveraging these different ecosystem partners to find the right partnership is key. And then when you come to the later stage fintech startups, we are really talking about selling to the corporates, the banks. How do you do that? Again, that's a different types of partnership that we're looking at, because you are looking for more strategic partnerships. And don't just look at the customers at the end of the tunnel, because along the way, there's also a lot of different types of partners that you can bring them there. Case in point, one of the startup programs that I mentioned earlier, Go to Market, we actually have a connections program that we specifically help later stage startups, fintechs, to connect them to corporate innovation team and who has already problem statements stated out there and looking for interesting, innovative solutions. And there's so much case studies, problem statements out there for innovative startups to solve. So how can third-party company like AWS help in that? We can, because we have access to both parties, right? So we can help accelerate that, and that's what we've been doing. It's been pretty successful, and we intend to scale that up, and hopefully this year, that's something that we could do that together in Singapore.
Great, thank you, Fanny. Yeah,
I really like the point about the leveraging the ecosystem. I really think that will probably be the first thing. So from my perspective, the challenges start with the first step is the exploration, or basically navigating through the sea or the ocean of different partners, which one to go, trying to think about the strategy, analyzing and looking into the capability gaps. I think there's different streams and different maybe objectives of the partnerships. I think the one that you referred to was probably more revenue generation, but there are other things about product building. So I think there's quite a lot of the different ways and use cases and flows. So if we talk about fintechs collaborating with the large FIs, I think one of the problems and the challenges that there is, and I've ran actually a little survey about a couple of weeks ago, and the first item on that survey was the difference in pace. And obviously when you, like a fintech is working with a larger company, like a large institution, be it a bank or insurance company or something else, they need to make sure that they're aligned not just on the strategic vision and the resource allocation, but also there is some empathy and timeline and managing each other's expectations on how long would things take. Probably starting with the simplest proof of concept, that's the most typical, but actually really efficient way. Trying to integrate the simplest solution first, as opposed to coming with, long-term 12-month projects, and then finding that complexities of it will possibly drag it into like years instead of months. But I feel another problem, for instance, is communication. I think when you belong, or when you're dealing with a larger organization, there's usually multiple teams that also get involved. And having ability to coordinate and to get everyone on the same page, to have everyone equally motivated, I think that's one of the struggles. How to overcome that struggle, what helps a lot is having a sort of a strategic executive sponsor, when identifying that person early at the large FI, someone who really needs and feels and would sort of create and manage and continue the momentum. So quite a few different fields, but I think many of those lessons could indeed be learned from the ecosystem. So from the network, from the community, there's multiple, but in very tight and friendly community here in Singapore. And maybe one last point, and that's a lesson I've probably learned, we all learned probably in the last 12 months. COVID gave us new opportunities. It's not just the challenges, there's a lot of the silver lining. And the good thing about that is, about COVID, is the fact that now partnerships don't need to be done locally. You can do them anywhere. You can perfectly find a partner in a different country, sign an agreement. We've had partnerships we're constantly doing cross-border partnerships. People coming to us from Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, India, like basically all of those relations, most of those relations are now done remotely, and it's perfectly normal. So maybe there's something to also think the scope is changing. Maybe
I can add an extra point at which Fanny sparked the thought. I think often enough, especially for early stage startups, I realize that it's important to not hand over your product roadmap to the corporate you're partnering with, right? So effectively, don't become a dev shop if that's not, hopefully that's not your intent. And many times that happens. I've seen very successful companies, they get a very big client or a very big partner, and then all they do is developing customizations for their big partner. And then effectively you've become a dev shop instead of being a product company, and then your roadmap's kind of taken away from you. So I think that's an important thing, especially for early stage startups.
Yes,
that's true.
Yeah, I agree. I think great that you guys already mentioned a couple of success strategies. I do agree. I think having that sponsor C-level buy-in, very important, aligning the KPIs, what do you really want to achieve from the get-go at the beginning. I think that's very important. And then I think also, as you mentioned, finding the right size of project. I mean, you can really, sometimes what I see with startups is that they basically offer everything, and sometimes they can actually do everything, but that's usually not a successful way of implementing and starting to work with corporates. I think identifying that one use case and then piloting on that seems to have worked quite well for the startups that have gone through our program. Cool. So covered that. Nice. I would like to quote Irina. Yesterday in your LinkedIn post, you talked about 3 strategies to grow your business and acquire new capabilities. It's build, buy, and borrow.
It's not me, actually. I
quote you, you quote someone else. And by borrow, you mean partnerships, right? So I think one of the questions I really want to address tonight is, or today, is really when should you, and I think also from the corporate's perspective, when should you build it yourself? When should you actually buy it, and when should you borrow it and partner? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, I can start. So from my perspective, between those 3 strategies, startups usually don't have the ability, well, if we're talking about startups, usually don't have the ability to buy or acquire companies. That might be the opposite way, but I think between the 2 strategies, building and borrowing, building, partnering with someone, building, typically from my perspective, the rule of thumb would be building the front end, making sure that you control the consumer experience, the product experience, the customer service teams, and the operations. So everything that really touches, this is where I think relying on a partner could sometimes be a little bit risky, because this last mile delivery or like the interaction can really drive strong impact, and it's really important. But for the back end, leveraging partnerships and fintech partnerships is one of the very strong and good strategies. How exactly for, again, like if we're talking about fintech startups, definitely leveraging partnerships for the smooth onboarding, for the KYC, for some additional payment capabilities, top-ups, cashing out, especially when you're talking about cross-border flows. It's very hard to build cross-border flows in-house within the company. It's not impossible, it's just long and expensive. Leveraging companies that would help you to acquire or to get connected to the banking relationships, or possibly even just connecting to the banks directly wherever needed. So leveraging the platform, fintech platforms, different or tech platforms as well, also to make sure that the back-end infrastructure is supported with the best and the most robust technologies. That seems to be the right approach.
Sounds good. So really customer-facing, build it yourself, and then back-end, you might as well want to borrow it and partner with other players.
Yes.
Cool. Amit, how about you? What's your opinion on building?
Look, at least from our perspective, when we do this a lot through our venture dev program, where we take our startups to our community of large corporates. And often enough, I think a couple of themes are common filter criteria or assessment criteria. So first, I think whatever the startup or the fintech is offering, is that something which is core to the end customer or the partner, or is it non-core, right? It's always easy to find partnerships or do partnerships on the non-core side, but sometimes on the core side, there may be some reservations, probably because you want to maintain control in-house, right? So I think it's important for the fintech to judge what is core and non-core for the corporate. How does the corporate think about their IT strategy, what they want to control and what they want to outsource or partner? Because many times you'll see enough large institutions build everything in-house. But in today's day and age, I would be very surprised if there's an institution out here or anywhere which is not partnering actively, or at least has partnered, right? So it's very rare these days. But the fit with the business strategy, the fit with the IT strategy, and then what unique value is this startup bringing? And finally, I would say large corporates are also looking at longevity of the fintech, right? Is this here to stay, or am I partnering for 3 months, 6 months in an innovation team, or can I really bring this value back to the business? And this fintech will succeed, so I will succeed with them, right? So longevity is a key criteria, I think, in many corporates' minds.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Amit. I would definitely agree with that. How about Fanny? How is it at AWS? What are your insights on
Yeah, I think I agree with Irina. I think on the back end, there's definitely a tech infrastructure layer where we could partner, or any other cloud provider could partner any startups in their business, especially fintech, because we all know security is top of mind. How can you ensure that your security and compliance are accordance to the regulations in the country? I think that's something that all startups, especially fintech startups, should definitely think on that from day one. And how can you leverage your partners, like the cloud platform they are in, to help out with that? So in AWS, we have, for example, a framework that help you to be compliant with the MAS regulations, for example. So that's something that is super easy. We have specialties to help you with that and help you along the way and grow the company together, right? But also on the front end, I would just like to add on that externally, not just customer experience, product experience, who do you partner with, such as pointing out F10, like joining an accelerator like F10, you have lots of partnership with just one partner. F10 itself offers so many different corporate opportunities for the startups who join the program. I think that's something that you don't have that like 5 years, not even 10 years, but 5 years before that, you don't have such robust ecosystem in this region. And I think we really need to think about it and leverage that, optimize what you have in your reach, and reach out to these ecosystem partners to help your company grow even faster.
And one additional point, so now I'm adding on top of what the guys have said. I think there's another type of partnership that is probably extremely important for everyone, and everyone should be doing this, is partnerships, well, at least some sort of dialogue with the government. So I think here in Singapore, we are very lucky and fortunate to have one of the most progressive regulators, which is very open, very collaborative, which runs the most exciting industry events, but also it's always very open to talk and to hear feedback, but also help the fintech ecosystem, no matter how big or small. I've seen some really incredible examples of them. The MAS actually being open to the suggestions. They want to know, they want to hear, and that's sort of I don't know, whether it's a partnership or a relationship, but it should absolutely be one of the top priorities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are various initiatives such as the FinTech sandbox, where once they graduate from that sandbox, there is really a certain stamp from the MAS that they're good to go, right? So
Rapyd, which is basically a showcase for all of the cloud-based FinTech platforms that actually connects FinTechs to the larger financial institutions and exposes and explains what kind of value can be derived. Yes, this is also in the MAS.
Exactly. No, great. So I think it was already mentioned, COVID really accelerated the digital transformation of the financial industry. The DeFi space is very much exploding, just with Coinbase yesterday's direct listing. And also funding of startups is reaching unprecedented levels. Curious where this is going. Really would like to ask the panel, where do you see the biggest opportunities going forward, leveraging partnerships? Where do you see the trends in the fintech space? Maybe I start with, who would like to pick that up first? How about you, Amit?
I can go. Look, I think we are singularly focused on solving problems where multiple parties interact with each other, which is really the bedrock of what blockchain offers. But we have also expanded our product suite in the recent past to include other multi-party computation platforms like Conclave. So what we in our world we are working with startups as well as corporates on primarily, I would say, B2B problems, right? We are less B2C today, right? Or our community is less B2C today. So we see three themes. So one is a lot of digitization and transformation happening in the trade world, right? So trade includes financing, but also includes supply chains and digitization of those supply chains. Especially during COVID, I think that accelerated because there was a need to do so, right? A lot of entities realized that they're not digitized enough things are paper-based, or even if they're digital, they have too many systems and those don't communicate with each other. So that's one area. I think you touched upon the DeFi space. I think the related work we do in the space is what I would call as tokenization of digital assets, or any asset which can be tokenized today. I see SDX in the room here, and we are working with them in Switzerland to really build a platform where they will pretty much cater to tokenized assets which exist today, which include crypto and non-crypto assets. But there will be many more assets which will come in the future, and that's what they are building a platform for, in fact, as a standalone company, in fact. So they're making huge investments. So that's a great example of what's coming and what's happening. And DeFi, of course, is very exciting, as most people know. And finally, I would say, just transformation, digital transformation across different parts of the business is where we see usage of platforms like Conclave. So for example, here, and Irina touched upon partnerships with MAS. So MAS, for example, referred a startup to look into our platform Conclave. This company is called One Hypernet. They actually build a multilateral netting solution for money exchanges. So they're effectively, by using our platform, cutting down fees for cross-border transfers by 96%. So, so that's what they're solving, and they're using platforms like ours to solve those. And that came through a referral from MAS, which is testament to the openness of the regulator here, as well as how they champion and how they support the community. So I think those are examples of what we see in globally, but definitely in the region as well.
Great, thank you very much, Amit. Good insights. Fanny, how is it on AWS side?
I think I'd like to touch upon the digital transformation side. I'm personally really excited with the F10’s platform. I think that's something that is really speeding up the process of connecting startups to corporates. And I think the speed itself, it's something that is going to blow up, right? The opportunities there is so huge. With just the speed to be connected to corporates, no more 6 to 18 months or even longer trying to sell to a corporate anymore, because you have this sandbox ready for you to utilize and prove that your product works and be able to integrate it to the companies. And that is in itself is pretty exciting. We are working with F10’s to leverage their product to kind of work with our connections program that I mentioned earlier to really connect FinTech and corporates. And I think that is something that we're working on this year, and I see that becoming definitely more common in the next 1 or 2 years.
Great.
Yeah.
Irina, how about you? Where do you see the biggest opportunities?
And what are the trends? And I'll start with the trends, and that'll maybe open the space for the opportunities. So I think really, actually, the three of us here represent one trend, which is a platformization. So I think what we're seeing is the development and the rise of the platforms that are easy to integrate and easy to leverage, that are flexible, that have a variety of the use case, that are global, and that can enable digital payments in a variety of the digital, FinTech flows or payments flows across borders, across industries, across verticals, across solutions. And the opportunities that I'm starting to see from my perspective is, first of all, sort of the democratization of the FinTech solutions. So on one end, we're seeing tech companies entering the FinTech space, and that's also a trend that is maybe not even very new. We've all known that Rapyd now is not just a super app, but is a financial service company, and the Grab Financial Group is valued pretty highly. I think is a very important part of the valuation. We're starting to see some other companies set to introduce their own services, and this is sort of one of the outcomes of those platforms and I guess the new collaborative paradigm that we're seeing. But on the other side, even from the point of view of the smaller startups, we're starting to see companies and visionary entrepreneurs opening new, I guess, creating solutions that didn't exist before and that are serving the needs and the gaps that haven't really been solved. Let me give you a few examples. I'm like, for instance, I like how these platforms are able to solve innovative use cases. One of the use cases that we've seen in one of the case studies we've solved is the live streaming commerce. How do you create those real-time, how do you leverage real-time payments so that people are able to immediately see the product, buy the product, and then the supplier or the merchant side immediately sees the money, and he or she or they can fulfill the service right away. They don't need to wait, like in the credit card world, you still have to sort of wait until something happens, or you have to factor it in. So leveraging the platform solutions as well as new technologies are like real-time payments. Another innovative use case that I mean, maybe it's not as innovative in the States, but like the trading platforms, not the trade, but the trading, like the Robinhoods, now starting to come in here. And we have some friends and companies that work with us, like a few of them. One of them, my favorite, is GoTrade. It's a new startup, and it enables free trading, stock trading for anyone starting from $1. They're now selling grabs, SPAC shares, altimeters, SPAC. But it's an exciting new solution, a new product, a new service that didn't exist before. It just literally just launched a little while ago. There are new startups that open up and create solutions for underserved and underpenetrated markets and segments. Like we had one project with a company called Lightpay that created a product for the real estate agents. And we have other people here in the room that are solving for creating products for the foreign domestic workers, for the helpers. Also, a new and interesting solution that hasn't really been solved yet, despite multiple attempts. But basically, what I'm seeing and what I like seeing is this new forward-looking product innovation that is based on the unsolved challenges. So, and that creates this financial inclusion that leverages and that creates sort of the that grows the size of the internet population, and it helps, I guess, grow the pie as opposed to compete with, for the same exact audiences. That's the exciting part about the FinTech platformization.
I agree, and I think especially here in Southeast Asia, mobile penetration is so high, right? So really having access, underbanked, unbanked population having access to FinTech solutions is something very encouraging and quite amazing, and how quickly that can happen. I think I want to open the floor to questions. We have an audience here in the room, and I also have received a couple of questions online, but I would like to hand it over first to the audience here in the room. Are there any questions to our panelists?
We have the mic.
Here we go. And we have a mic, yeah.
Great, thank you. How much time do I have for this question? Because there's part A and B.
Let's start with A and then...
All right, great. My two questions were partly answered, but they were related to speed of sales cycle for early stage startups to corporates. And then the little other part of the question was that what funnel can we tap into for establishing those relationships? I think they were partly answered, but allow me to please share a little background about what we do, and that will put the context of the question a little bit properly. So we've been a little bit of a stealth mode, but we are focused, our mission is to improve two important pieces of AI. One is the causality detection within data sets, and take that insights into improving forecasting. So from a technology company's approach, a startup's approach, we would, Irina, you mentioned a lot of platforms focus on front end, and then you explore partnerships with back end. We want to be one of the back end engine, right? And I'm the founder, so I've invested a lot in this company for the last year and a half to build that back end platform. Now, what we plan to do this year is why in this FinTech forum, we have two FinTech products to bring this forward to, but I think our aspirations could also be outside FinTech at some stage. And I'll come to the question just to complete the context. So where's the application? There are a couple of use cases. We've taken very chaotic, difficult to predict data sets. Like in payments, you would look at currencies data, and it's fairly choppy, and that's why spreads are large. So we have gone as far as being able to forecast short-term upcoming price predictions using our platform to about an accuracy of about 80%. So that's quite high compared to what typically traditional machine learning does for large institutions. An application of that use case is we have proprietary ways to obviously use trading platforms for our own capital and that's like an internal thing. But as a cell, we have a B2C product where there's a large retail trading community that's underserved and that does not get enterprise AI quality insights or news of that kind of value that they can act on their own discretion. So that's one area that we're focusing on this year. But I think from a partnerships point of view, my question is this back-end platform intelligence that we built to bring it forward and solve other problems, whether in financial industry, different ecosystem, brokerages, family offices, institutions, there's an array of projects possible. And to Amit's point, truly, we don't want to be an outsourced software development shop. So how do we bring this as a platform, and what's the best funnel to tap into through this great ecosystem to do a couple of use cases? Because in this case, we're not saying this is restricted to a use case. We want to discover use cases, but we have a clear target of our first few products, the path to monetization. And the last bit I'll share about us is we, quite humbly, we just won one of the largest hackathons in Africa a couple of weeks back using our deep learning. And this was a non-financial data set. So it kind of talks about platform ambition. And what we won is we solved biomedical data modeling used to build drugs, antivirus response drugs on one of the platforms. So I think that's where as a company, our ambition could touch different areas, but in this context this year, focus is FinTech. So how can we go forward and work with people in this room or people elsewhere in Singapore, and what would be a way forward? That's really the question.
Thank you very much for the question. Can you maybe also tell us your name and the company?
Sure, my name is Parag, and the company is called FinGenesis. We've been in kind of stealth mode, and thanks to AWS, we're on their ecosystem now, doing our migration of infrastructure. And I think we will be more public about us from May or June.
Great, so thank you so much for these questions.
I thought you may have an answer.
Yeah, I'm wondering who would like to take that up first. I do have some thoughts about it, but
you should go first then.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's really in my opinion, I think that's obviously the challenge that many startups have when they start out, right? There are so many use cases you can tackle. So I think it's really about this startup being agile, trying various use cases and talking to various partners and seeing which use case triggers the most interest or the most chance for really generating revenue. And if you have identified that, if you have interviewed enough potential customers, you then get really an idea about what could work, what doesn't work, and then you go forward. I think it's a continuous iteration process, and it's really a bit of trial and error and going through that circle continuously. That would be my thoughts. That's how I would advise you. Any other thoughts?
It sounds like this is like the question that you've asked a little bit feels familiar to the case study interview, like that I was doing in my school. I think it's like a go-to-market question, and it boils down to me to my husband, who is also a CEO for his own small startup, yet small still. He's saying that you have to go where you're most loved. When you see the most traction, when you see the most people being most recipient to the solution, when you see like that there's fast response, fast reaction, fast results, this will probably bring you into like probably the best market opportunity. Instead of spreading and spraying and praying and trying to cover a variety of different niches, actually trying to become at least like select one vertical and try to create a few case studies in that space. Even if they're unpaid, even if they're free, small chunks of that will help you to illustrate the value. You're right. You have a very robust system, and it could do amazing things, I'm sure. It's about creating those credible case studies that can illustrate the value. They can ideally quantify the value as well. They can have credentials that will become your credentials, that will have people that will be keen to, basically give a quote and, share the reaction, to give a testimonial to the value that your company is providing. That's probably how if I were a startup founder, that's what I would do.
Yeah, great. I think we also for the Fanny and Amit, we can address that maybe later as well, as we are here. So I would also like to pick one question online. In the meantime, we have actually Lisa Schröder who is asking us a question about how to avoid being a dev shop to just one big client. Amit, I think you had addressed that earlier on. How would you advise startups that have that?
Look, it's hard, I think, especially if you're a small company, you just landed your big client, you really want to nail that project, you really want to do that well. I think it is hard. I think what I have seen being successful and unsuccessful is first knowing what you want to do irrespective of that customer you have just landed, right? So what is your journey for the next 2 years at least, or a year, right? So you have clarity of what product you are building, right? And maybe what the customer is telling you is good addition to the product roadmap, and in which case you should include it in your base product. But if not, then you should also have the right, and you do have the right to say, look, this doesn't fit. We may do it for you, but this is not something we'll only do this, right? So it's hard, right? And I realize this. I think the second thing I've seen often enough, especially by tech-led founders, is they don't invest in a sales organization early enough, right? So you somehow landed this first customer, maybe your relationships or maybe your connection or whatever else, right? Or maybe somebody really liked your technology and invested in you, but you were shy and said, look, I don't want to go after other sales because I'm overwhelmed. But I think you have to sell in advance, especially in our world where you're building B2B products. Sales cycles are long, as Parag said as well, right? So I would say investing in a sales organization, as small as it could be, but it is important. But also having clarity on your own vision, your own product, for at least the next 12 to 18 months is important, so that you can hold back and say, look, we'll find other ways to address this, or we'll address this later. But we have our journey to do as well. But it's not easy. It's easier for me to say this on the stage, but it's not easy when you're in those shoes and have a client who is championing you as your first client, right?
I'd like to also add, even if you have one single big client, you need to be aware that cash is king as an early stage startup. So it's still pretty critical to get quick wins, even though they are small, to kind of sustain you along the way, because you never know, this could take 18 months, 24 months, but what are you going to do in the meantime? So how can you get that quick win, small, fast, smaller customer, that's fine, because if you can close that within 3 months, that's a win for you regardless, and that's help you to sustain the company and help you have a larger, longer term vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really not just not letting go of that business development drive, right? Even though you just nailed now your biggest customer, continue looking for new opportunities, smaller opportunities, so that you can handle it with the resources you have on hand. I would like to address again the audience here in the room. Any additional questions? Yes, at the back.
Thank you. So I'm David from GPay. So especially when you partner with a much larger company, say AWS, who does almost everything, how do you prevent conflict of interest between partners?
Thank you for that question. I think
I
that's
can
one
address
for
that.
Fanny.
I guess you are referring to if you're partnering with a company like Amazon, which does pretty much everything. How do you trust the company that we will not repeat what you're doing? Is that the question?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay. Got it. We've got this all the time. Like the number one example is always, hey, Netflix is one of the biggest AWS customer, but we also have Amazon Prime Video. How does that work? Mm-hmm. And it's perfectly fine, because we assure all our customers that our business units are run independently. We don't say, although we work with the other business units for a larger strategic approach to help our customers at the end of the day, such as what I mentioned earlier, one as Amazon approach to say work with the Twitch team, the Alexa team, or the Amazon team. But at customer level, we don't share any data, we don't share any private information. I mean, that's basically not right and ethical. And that's how we maintain that relationship, and we earn trust, which is one of our main leadership principles. So we have 14 leadership principles in the company, and one of them is earn trust, and that's how we earn trust with our customers from day one. And that's how we've got customers like Netflix, for example. I think that's the prime examples that we always have. And not only that, there's tons and tons of other examples that we have. We have millions of active customers in the world globally on AWS platform. But they could be indirect competitor of some of our business units. But we don't usually paddle with that, because that's we kind of work with the customers to earn trust from them, from what they need from the AWS services to help them build their platform.
Thank you, Fanny. Any other thoughts on that, or I think that was well addressed. We have also a number of bigger corporates in the room, and I'm sure also online. Are there any questions, thoughts?
Additional comments?
Additional comments, yeah. I think actually we have a lot of experts in the room who are dealing with innovation all the time. Neil, yeah?
Thanks. Neil Thomas here from Six Group, and also representing SDX, Six Digital Exchange. What I see is a comment and a question really is, to your point about go-to-market strategies when fintechs approach us, they're obviously solving a part of a problem quite often, and it's understanding the pain points of the corporates that you're trying to solve. And quite often I ask those startups, to look, or fintechs, to look to their left and look to the right to see who's in their ecosystem and what are they building that supports your business model, and can you approach that together? So to your point about trying to create AI advisory tools, who are the platforms who are delivering the systems to the banks or the EAMs who are then delivering to ultimately their customers? If you can embed yourself there, then you create yourself a really nice environment to go to market. What my question to the panel would be, how do you see this? Do you see this in the industry, and how do startups and fintechs really approach? Is there an environment for them to approach their ecosystems so that they can co-bid or pitch to corporates together?
It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, so at least in our world we do see that, Neil, quite often. As you rightly said, no startup or no fintech is solving the end-to-end problem, usually, at least in the beginning, right? Because they're just beginning. And we have seen that the successful startups are finding other complementary startups, or even sometimes slightly bigger, but maybe not the biggest of companies, to work with, and together attack the business opportunity, whether it's an RFP or whether it's a unique custom opportunity. So we see that quite often. I think my view of a successful fintech partnership is when the fintech knows why they are special and what value they bring. I think, Irina, you were touching upon that. And then then it's a discussion about why should the corporate or even the other partner work with you versus somebody else, because everything we are doing, most likely there's another entity working on the same thing, right? So I think why you, and why you can add exceptional value to that partnership and then help that partner win the contract or the customer is something I don't see often enough. I see fintechs talk about their technology much and not about what customer problem they're solving or what business opportunity you're going to address. So I think you have to dumb down the technology bit and really ramp up the value bit.
Yeah, and maybe I add here a comment from our side. Running F10 and our programs, we've now over 150 alumni startups that went through our programs, and we are seeing now more and more collaborations also between the startups. So for example, a data extraction startup that just doing this job incredibly well is partnering with a enterprise data management solution, and they basically provide this additional service to the EDM providers. So for them, they can solve directly a use case that one of their customers had to feed in data into their EDM solution. So I think being part of an ecosystem, I think that's what we are all building, right? We can bring them together, but I think it's also something we need to continue going out and also praising that we want to see more partnerships happening also between the startups. I think there's one more question which I would like to ask the panelists, which was highly rated up in the online chat, and the question was, how do businesses deal with uneven power dynamics in partnerships? Who would like to take that last question?
Can you repeat the question?
Uneven power dynamics.
Yeah, how do you deal with uneven power dynamics?
Uneven power dynamics.
Yeah, when a large company and a smaller startup, basically,
Yeah.
one is a buyer, another one is a vendor. I think it is about self-awareness and empathy from both sides, which will be helpful, and sort of the goodwill from both sides. The power dynamics is actually an unfair thing, because I think this relation typically is actually quite balanced, because both sides need each other equally. The incumbents need innovation, they need to drive the product like edge, the product development, new capabilities, and they can't do it with the same speed and the same pace. They do have typically larger assets or like larger resources and probably a little bit more time. But the value, and the huge value that the fintechs are bringing to the table is the ability to tweak, pivot, experiment, and drive things faster and further, probably. But they can also only do it together. So I think it is, maybe size-wise, there is a little bit of this disbalance, but generally it is about realizing that both sides are equally valuable, they are just contributing different things.
Yeah, and I think I would even...
It's a synergy, that's how it should work.
I would add here also that if, for example, what we are sometimes facing is startups ask us, should we do the POC for free? And or a pilot program for free? I think what the bigger player with more resources also needs to understand, if you want to enter into a sustainable relationship, you need to fund that company somehow, right? And that can be, like, even if it's only $20,000 or $30,000, that will help the company a lot to fund and give runway for another few months to keep going. So I think creating awareness is a good word on both sides, and I think that's everyone will understand that, yeah, I do need resources as well to keep going.
I think this is a real issue, and it's very common, right?
Yeah.
So this is not something which doesn't happen, right? This, like, free POCs are very, very common. And if you're a startup who is bootstrapping especially, I think then you're struggling if you have to do a 6 months POC for free. I think it's very common. I find, a couple of things which work well. So first, I think we touched upon the value conversation and the time to value, right, as well. Like, how quickly can you deliver that value? I also find that you have to hedge your bets, right? Like, if you're talking to a large corporate, you have to talk to their peers. And in some sense, there is that sentiment of, I don't want to be left out. If I'm the corporate, I see value, but I'm negotiating with you. I actually don't want to lose out myself, right? So when I was on the corporate side doing partnerships, if there was an exciting fintech, we really wanted that. But we knew, our peer in the industry also wanted that, right? So you have to understand that, like, you have to balance the power dynamic a little bit by, making sure that you are diversifying your risk, right? And then, I think then it's about, making sure that you're speaking the language of the partner or the customer, so that they don't take too much time just understanding tech and other things, and you're losing them, right? And they're saying, look, this is so new age. This is so emerging, I need to try it. It's a common thing. We see that a lot in our startups, for sure.
Great, thank you, Amit.
It's a very good. question.
Good point. Yeah, so I think time's up already. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed that panel meeting again in person. Thank you so much, Rapyd, for hosting us here today, and thank you so much to our corporate partners, SIX, Bank Julius Baer, and R3 for supporting us. Maybe just a last word from the panelists as well. Where can they find you if they would like to reach out to you?
LinkedIn was probably the best thing. So
Yes.
If you try to search Arena Rapyd, you'll probably only see, you'll see a couple, but you'll find me
Should
there.
find you.
Yep.
Yeah, LinkedIn will be the best. Feel free to reach out for any AWS related activities. We'll be there to help you.
Likewise.
Great. And for those online, you can now stay on and you can join a session if you want to meet some of the corporates. All your colleagues are joining, so you can continue a chat there. I think now it only leaves me to wish you all successful partnerships and see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
you.